Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Andy Bassett. I'm the CEO here at Ellerbrock-Norris. I'm joined with Ben Woods, our Senior Stewardship Advisor for Ellerbrock-Norris Wealth Strategies. And we're here to talk about internal succession planning.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I appreciate everybody joining us, and we're going to have a good time. I'll let you maybe talk a little bit more about your background and such here in a second, but just for everybody, know that there's a chat function where you can go in and submit questions along the way. So we certainly want this to be interactive. So if something comes to your mind, go ahead and submit in the chat. We will try to answer it as we see them. Cam, who's not on camera, will be monitoring that. But if we happen to miss it or whatever, we're also going to have time for questions at the end. Yep. So, but super excited. Again, I'm Andy Bassett. I'm the CEO here at Ellerbrock-Norris. Ben, you want to talk about who you are, your background? Because you're going to run a lot of this show.
Oh, all right. Well, so I'm Ben Woods, Senior Stewardship Advisor here. I'm on the wealth strategy side of our division. We are an independent registered investment advisory firm, and we do a lot of work with owners, families, and businesses to try to help them make sense of all the things that hit them in way of the finances. And so today we'll be going through this presentation and hopefully at least getting folks to think a little bit about the future and how all these things kind of tie together. My industry experience, been in the business a little over 27 years. Most of that time working with individuals and families and business owners. So looking forward to this discussion, and hopefully we can bring some great value to you guys.
Perfect. And Cam, it's not changing. There we go. Already, maybe you did that. So anyway, if you want to go back one, you can show our pictures again real quick because we were just talking about us. But anyway, as we were just saying, one of my role as CEO of the company, one thing I want to share with everybody on this call is one of the lenses I am going to provide throughout this conversation is that of somebody that's going through this exact process. So here at Ellerbrock-Norris, we're a family-owned business. We're in the middle of doing this exact thing. So I have a unique lens to provide there. So, I may provide some context on things we've experienced and stuff we've gone through along the way. So that's exciting for me to be able to share with the group on the call. But at that, let's get to maybe the agenda here, which I do not know why that won't respond for me, Cam. So anyway, today's agenda, obviously we want to define success and what that means when we're looking at, transitioning a business internally. There's three main questions we're going to kind of talk through that you're going to lead through, Ben. The 7 steps to an internal business transition. We'll talk through those. And then of course, where do we start? That's what a lot of people, it's a big thing to think about. And they're like, yeah, where do I start? So we'll talk about that. And then of course, at the end, we'll kind of walk through, our process, how we help people navigate through this and how we view it as well. So anyway, that's going to be the agenda for the day. One thing I want, if you can kick it forward a slide. Thanks, Cam. So our brand tagline here at Ellerbrock-Norris is protect your purpose. And when we talk about that, we talk about thinking of our purpose. We talk about my business, my life, my future. And I don't know about you, Ben, but I can't think of anything that really connects those more than the exit plan in our business, right?
It's a big part of our lives. I mean, business is personal. These things are intertwined. And the sooner we kind of realize that and plan for that future, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah. So I think for all of you that are joining us, as we talk about this, think about your purpose, and think about how it connects with obviously the business, your personal life, your family, and then of course your future, because exiting the business is a big part of positioning ourselves to have success in the future. So, and on that, one of the things we talk about a lot here at Ellerbrock-Norris, and I think this is a lens I'd love to share with everybody so you can think through as we're talking through this discussion. We talk about the 10 impact areas of risk. They're on your screen right now. We're just going to be talking about one today, which is perpetuation planning, exit planning. But, think of in your business as you see these here, I want people to think about having this type of deep dialogue and thought around all of these areas. And then furthermore, thinking about how these areas coordinate together.
Yeah, I think this is a very unique process that I think that we bring to the table for a lot of business owners, is to help them kind of organize their thoughts, not just the owner, but also the other key people within your organization. Because oftentimes, we get busy, we get in the business, we're working really hard, trying to, make things happen, but maybe we don't have really a process or a structure to kind of come together to say, hey, where do we think maybe we're exposed to risks So your HR department lead might think it's one thing. Your CFO might think it's something else. It's one of the top impact areas that you're currently maybe exposed to. But we try to take folks through a process that helps them prioritize where they see risk in the business at that time. And to Andy's point, perpetuation planning, although be one of the cards, it affects multiple cards here.
Yeah,
No doubt.
absolutely. And it's kind of depicted here in this next slide. If you think about it, like as we build these plans and strategies, we can think about how it touches the business continuity plans we have in place, how it touches the overall strategy in the organization. Certainly our key personnel planning, right? A lot of times who we're transitioning that business to are pretty key people, right? And so how we're planning along the way to keep and accelerate those people into leadership, ownership roles. And then, contracts, the legal environment, there's so many different things that go into it. So again, I think just one of the things we like to get across the audience as we're going to spend now going forward, Ben will dive into this one specific topic, but we always want people to have this more holistic lens around how managing risk across an organization can help you achieve success in any one of the areas.
Yeah, and I also think it's very important, like what we bring to the table within this particular exercise for our business owners is that you get a third-party perspective as to your business. Well, oftentimes when we're in our business, it's very hard to see it from an objective third-party eye. And I do think that this particular exercise that we do with our clients is really unique.
Absolutely. Well, at that, Ben, I'm going to pretty much turn it over to you to start diving into.
Don't go anywhere. I got plenty of questions.
I'll be right here. Let's do it.
So I guess the way to start this off is, perpetuation planning, the main why behind it is so many business owners, the bulk of what they have been building, many folks will even, affectionately call their business their baby, is to maximize the value of that vehicle. Maximizing your valuation and reduce that tax burden starts today. I mean, the sooner we start planning and understanding all the different ways to exit a company, the better off we're going to be in the long run. We also put ourselves in a position to protect our employees and maintain that business continuity, which is essential in smoothly transitioning the business, but also if you put yourself in the position to have the strongest valuation for your company. So setting up that successor and having that clarity is absolutely imperative. So securing the legacy, obviously, with a business, if it's something that's been longstanding within the family, there's multiple people and generations that are impacted by the health of that business, and we want to make sure that it's thriving. And the earlier we start that planning process, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely.
So there's a few things that we know, and we know for certain, and that is that a business exit, it will happen.
Exactly. Yep.
And there's 50% of the population currently that are actually planning in advance for that to happen. And there's 50% that, quite frankly, are going to be part of the 5 Ds, as we like to call those: death, disability, divorce, distressed business, and disagreement between the business owners. These are all very common. We hear about it all the time in our communities. So no matter what, every business owner will leave their business voluntarily or involuntarily.
Well, and this has always been interesting to me because as we've evolved our model at Ellerbrock-Norris, we showed already the impact areas, and we talk about risks that exist in business, and we talk about all these things that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
We build good safety strategies because somebody might get injured. We have good insurance programs because something might happen, or all these mights. But I think this slide we got to pay attention to because this is going to happen to every business. And so when we think about risks in our business, this is one that is not avoidable. And so solving for it is probably pretty darn important.
Well, and having the processes in place, just for the simple fact that if that day does come, and we've all, unfortunately, if you're a business owner, have experienced this or seen this with other business owners in your community, out of nowhere, something happens. We have a bad diagnosis that comes about, and that particular owner happens to be the rainmaker of the company. They're the ones that's out there in the community. They've been the ones to secure the big deals and the big clients. Sometimes we have concentration of those clients, and so when that happens suddenly, and if we don't have an operational structure in place, then the valuation of the company is going to go down, and it's going to get picked apart by the buyers that come after the fact. Suddenly one of our owners pass away.
So we know this is going to happen. Why would people not be planning for it?
Well, simply, there's a lot of reasons. Starting any process is a pain. We all have a lot of things on our plate, and so I think the big one is, not sure where to start is one of them. Difficulty discussing financial matters and personal goals. The amount of people that like kind of stay away from those conversations, whether that's, within a couple, obviously couples, a lot of times you'll have one person take the lead role when it comes to the investing and the finance piece of it. But the other person has a say in it. They have a heart of as to what their life is going to look like, not only now, but into the future when they retire. And so having somebody be able to start those conversations, lead those conversations, and help find out what really truly matters, not only in the personal life, but also in the business is key. Process also seems really difficult. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of moving parts, and it requires a lot of sophistication and a lot of people that know a lot of things about, different aspects of your business. And then, quite frankly, there's fear. There's some fear about like what life is going to be like after a person leaves the business. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you know it. It's a good part of what your daily life is. It's part of your structure. Yep. Take that away, and a lot of times you'll see people like their mental capacity will kind of drop that first few years after regular retirement or retirement from the business. And so we have to find ways that we can, fix our schedule post sale.
Well, I think too, while it's not on here, from personal experiences, it's just so easy to continue to kick the can down the road, right? You're focused, you're in the business, grinding away, the blood, sweat, tears that go into building something you're passionate about, and life sneaks up on you, right? All of a sudden you're like, whoa, I got to start thinking about this. And, we talk about the 5-year plan. I know we'll get into the runway that we talk about here, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a big piece of it that a lot of business owners and leaders can relate to, that it just all of a sudden sneaks up on you.
Yeah, and it does. Well, and it's the saying, I'll get to it tomorrow, or whatever. And it's just, it's one of those things that puts on the back burner. And then there's cost. I mean, the last point talks about cost. A lot of times we're worried about like, what is this going to cost me? I mean, to be frank, I'll talk to you in the next couple of slides here about this. Is when we look at cost, if we have the right people at the table, that cost can be shared across. But the earlier we get started on, the cost will be reduced. And when we talk about that, the cost of doing nothing far exceeds the cost of getting good, solid planning done. Because the bleed out that you have from tax and inflation and fees across the board will eat away at what you actually get from the sale of your company.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the key, is the cost of doing nothing is going to be oftentimes much more than the cost to put the plan in place. So, all right, well, let's skip ahead to, let's dive into the questions, people should start asking themselves, right?
Yeah, these are pretty basic, but they are impactful and important to ask. Obviously, when do I want the transition to take place? When do I want to make this transition? Right. And so there is a certain level of financial planning on the personal side of things that needs to be occurring, because we need to have a good understanding of what we need to get out of the business to maintain the lifestyle that we've come to enjoy as a business owner. Who do we want to transition this business to, right? Do we have the right people in place currently, or do we need to be very active and intentional about finding the right key seats to bring on board? Now, we went through a transition, obviously, of a family business. It's been in Nebraska for a very long time. And talk to maybe a little bit about that and like what that looked like specifically for our organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think the who, that may be sometimes answered in family, maybe it's not. It could be answered with key people already. But I think the bigger thing is not only once you've identified who, is spending the right time making sure that we're building the systems, processes, plans to bring that next generation of people up in the organization, position them as leaders, get that vision, that future, all of the things that go into, rallying the team behind it, getting everybody to understand that this is a legacy company that's going to go on for years, and the why behind all that. And I think to me, that was a big, it was a big focus of ours, was to make sure we spent a lot of time doing that. Then you can get into the mechanics and things of that. nature. But yeah, I mean, for us, that was a big thing. So I think the who and the key personnel planning around that who is such a big piece of this.
And when you guys went through that, was there a process that you guys subscribed to, or was it basically within the organization, just things that you were reading? How did that kind of come about in terms of like positioning and getting that structure in place?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot internal, but we leaned a lot on external partners to help us navigate through that. I mean, obviously, Ellerbrock-Norris, we do this for a lot of our clients, so we had the expertise internally. But I think a big thing that I would heavily lean on for folks is to think about things like leadership coaching and getting, the ability to get that next generation to understand what it means to lead a company, lead people. And we leaned into that pretty heavy, and that paid huge dividends as we went through the process. And now it's something that we're extending out, further in the organization as well. So, yeah, very cool. But yeah, I mean, I think those are the things I would highlight at this point for sure.
Beautiful. Well, so like, how do I make the transition successfully, right? Like where do we start, right? And so as we get into that, we talked a little bit about 7 steps to successfully transition the business. And really, the first thing starts with a team, assembling the right team of professionals. We have to have an understanding that there's so much information out there, and it is very much, within these silos of, professionalism, right? And so you have your legal advice with our attorneys, you have your CPAs, you have, the folks that will help us through the business valuation. We may need to structure some life planning or, some maybe family planning if we're transitioning within a family organization. There's a lot of psychology that goes into all of this. And so assembling the team is critical out of the gate because no single advisor has all the knowledge and the expertise to do this and optimize a plan. And so oftentimes what we will see is folks will lean on just the CPA, but not take into consideration some of the other levers that could be pulled within the estate planning piece of it, or within the financial planning / investment management piece of it. There is a lot of sophisticated tools out there that the folks in those silos know and understand very well. And so the key is to be able to put together a plan and have one person centralized that is kind of captaining it and taking them through the stages. So this multidisciplinary team is what is really essential to get this thing going. And so from an assembly standpoint, the way I look at it is a lot of folks that are on this call probably have many of these people already in place at the table. Communication between all of them is absolutely critical, and making sure that the right people are coming along at the right sequence of your journey to maximize this perpetuation.
Yeah, I think something you hit the nail on the head on, and we saw it in our organization. We see it a lot with our clients, and this goes across, going back to those original slides, all the different areas we navigate through from a risk perspective, but certainly when it comes to this one, is we have a lot of professionals that are on our team and they operate incredibly successfully in their own practices, but oftentimes we keep that information in silos.
Yes.
We keep it segregated, and that information doesn't get coordinated across all those minds and brains to help bring a successful resolution collectively. And so that's just one of the areas when you talk about having, somebody at the center of that, it's a big deal. And we saw that in our organization. We see it a lot with our clients. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, and it is interesting to point out, like within our organization, we don't necessarily have a estate planning attorney on staff. We don't have CPAs on staff, but with our business owners, if they have competent, solid individuals in those seats already, we want to work with them to kind of get everybody on the same page. If they happen to have maybe a gap in any one of those areas, of course, we have great relationships built here in Omaha that we can introduce and help to assemble that team.
Awesome.
Second one here is,
slide.
Yeah, the great slide. So, we need to minimize the risk within our organization, right? And so basically this picture is kind of cute. We got a 2005 Chevy Silverado. Yeah, it's the same doggone truck. One of them's looking a little bit better than the other one, to say the least.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. Actually, I have a book that I wrote recently on this exact topic, and literally the subtitle of the book is minimize risk to maximize value of your company. And I think that this hits the nail on the head again. Specifically, when we're talking about exit planning, obviously we want to do everything we can to maximize that the return on that. But I think for people that are watching and listening to this, is, again, going back to all these other, think about how much, pulling certain levers to minimize certain risks in our organization over the long term are going to actually ultimately maximize value and give us a true return on that investment. And sometimes it's hard for us to see that. And, our job, of course, and other advisors can help people see that. But I think having the mindset of why we invest in things to minimize risk in our organization is ultimately to hopefully get the most value out of that when the time is right. And so I think that's just a unique way to look at it that I don't know that a lot of people do when they're investing in risk management strategies.
Yeah, and to the point on like the truck, it's like the more we take care of the things we have, the longer it's going to run for us, and the better the outcomes are going to be in the end, right? And so, yeah, kind of fun. I mean, unless you're a big Ford guy, that's a Chevy truck thing. We could start a war just with talking about that.
That's a whole nother podcast, I guess, or seminar. But here's another good slide that just talks about, I mean, again, going back to some of those, the slides at the beginning, you think about, these are pretty obvious, but, retaining people. Yeah. How important is it as we're going through transitions to keep our team in place? That's going to absolutely increase the value of the business. Or safety. We can reduce certain costs related to insurance and other things that are big on, big balance sheet items that we can reduce. But again, keeping our people and, not having somebody get injured on the job site and losing that key person, or the key personnel planning, the contracts we get into, you can start to see how much getting good plans and strategies across all this stuff is going to do nothing but overall increase the value of the business. So then when we start to assemble the team, we start to build that runway on the exit planning side of it. All of these things have been stacking chips over time to allow us to increase our value and ultimately provide us a better reality of a successful outcome. Right?
Yep, most definitely. Like the first one, that with employee retention and incentives can be monetary, of course. I mean, we have to keep up with the way inflation is pushing us at this point with our employees, especially our key ones. However, different generations look at certain things as to maybe even be more important. Maybe it's the time, and maybe it's the experience, maybe it's the culture. It's having a good understanding and a process to find out what is important with our employees, especially our key employees, is absolutely critical to our outcomes. We want to keep those people in those seats.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we're talking about maximizing value. Suppose we got to talk about how we create valuation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, when we're talking about valuation, and we've talked a lot about like maximizing and getting the most and trying to get that multiple as high as possible. Sometimes in a situation when we're passing down to an employee or through the family, we actually want to, maybe decrease or try to reduce the valuation that we're transferring to those folks, because quite frankly, where are they going to get the money? They have to find a way or a mechanism to be able to buy out the business owner who is exiting. Obviously, we want to be building our businesses for a third-party sale at all times, because then that way we are getting maximum valuation is going to be out there if we decide not to go down the path of selling to key employees or to a family member. But along the way, when we go out to, find a valuation and put together a valuation, there's a lot of different ways we can go about that. Multiple of EBITDA is one of them, asset-backed, comparisons within the marketplace, and we can also kind of discount cash flows. There's a variety of different ways to build that valuation. You can get a formal valuation, which I would suggest if we're getting close to, the tipping point of wanting to move on and selling the business. Yes, formal valuations are absolutely necessary. But you can start with an informal valuation, which quite frankly dovetails really nicely into, making sure that our key people are shored up and going through that process. So there's ways we can get an informal valuation just to get an idea of what the company's worth and work off of that. That's pretty low cost. It's just simply a process. Nothing to be scared of there, but definitely important. We need to have an understanding of what our company's worth, and so we can measure it and see that we're making good strides towards maximization there.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about this more, but some people might be listening saying, wait a minute, you said we're going to maximize value. And then you say, well, on an internal transition, we might want to lower that value for affordability of transition within the company.
Correct.
And so I think that's where, when we talk about these runways and all these different levers that can be pulled, we can still ultimately maximize value to the exiting owner in different strategies that don't have to be 100% reliant on sheerly the share value of the company.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think
Absolutely.
I don't want people to say, wait a minute, I heard one thing and just read the other, because that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. But that was a huge eye opener for me, because we did an internal, perpetuation. And it was like, wow, you start figuring out how to make it happen. And the valuation becomes a real thing that you've got to wrestle with. And with, private equity and all these different external factors out there that put pressure on that, you really got to get dialed. And we were able to do it. We're proud of that, but it takes a lot of planning, a lot of time and effort and energy, right?
Yep. And it's deeply personal because you have different people at different stages of their career. You may have an aging owner that is ready to retire right now out of the gate, but there may be, because we haven't done the preparation, there might not be, folks that have the cash flow to be able to make that happen. And so to your point, every single one of our organizations is unique. And because there are so many tools and different ways that we can go about these exits, no one size fits all will fit the bill here. It's going to be a lot of work to go ahead and find the right pathway to success.
Absolutely. So we have already talked about our key people. So what do we do to prepare, the buyer, the successor, our people internally to go through this process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first part is identifying who the successor is and the potential successors maybe behind them, and getting a good, clear understanding as to how we want to perpetuate, right? Like I said, sometimes the people will already be in the seats. Sometimes we got to go find them, right? What skills or training maybe do they already possess, but maybe they have a gap and we need to go ahead and invest some resources into educating them and getting them up to speed on the areas maybe we see some weak spots, right? Frankly, this one will surprise a lot of people, but the communication piece of it. Oftentimes business owners hold these things very close to vest, which I think is a mistake, because there's two things going on there. People want a clear direction as to where their career path is headed, and they want to have a good understanding of that. And if they don't, then you leave a gap in which somebody can come in and try to fill it and try to steal some of your key people. And so that's very critical. We want to get kind of a timeline there. So, and then family dynamics. There's a lot with that one. And you can speak to that probably more than I can on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that gets very probably appreciated through these is it's emotional. And the emotion specifically within families that happens as you're exiting, and maybe the vision is shifting a little bit. I mentioned earlier being really diligent about creating and casting that vision, connecting to the why, and that might not 100% align to the exiting partner or the exiting family member. And so there's definitely a lot of emotion. So, being prepared, knowing how to handle. I mean, for us in ours, while it was stressful at times and there was it was actually a lot of fun because we could rally behind, like, this is a legacy company. There's really cool things we're doing. And so, but I hope many of the people watching this are fortunate enough to have family businesses and are going to have to navigate the family dynamic. And, some, it's always varying, but, just know there's going to be emotion. It's unavoidable. And this is where I think getting outside perspective, leadership coaching, good advisors to help understand how to handle those different emotions, because they've seen it all. We've seen it all.
Yep.
A lot of people have seen it all. So they can provide incredible advice. So I want to really emphasize, think about who can help you navigate through those emotional times, because they're going to be there.
Yeah, they're absolutely going to be there. Yeah. Like, the business is personal. It is. And it's, especially with those owners that have, been doing this for 30, 40 years, whatnot, and they've built their business. It is something that they value very, very much. And we want to make sure that we get the right people and the right team of professionals around them to help extract what those feelings are, so that we don't have hard feelings later. So fair versus equitable, that's another big piece. Intertwining some of the estate planning pieces with the personal assets and the business. Maybe you have somebody that is in the business that's working diligently, building systems, teams, processes, and all that good stuff, and out there working with the clients and like accelerating and bringing growth to the company. And then you may have other folks in the family that aren't participating in that. And so working tightly with the estate planning attorney, not only on the business, but on the personal, to find a way to transition all that so everybody feels good about it. And, we don't put ourselves in a position where we have those hard feelings. Um, so
Yes. Yeah. So I guess I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of levers that can be pulled,
a
lots of
lot of them.
strategies that go into this. So,
Mhm.
let's talk about maybe some of the execution, right?
Yep. And this is very much not a all-encompassing list here. There's only 4 up there, right? So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Even the one we listed, if you have enough time within the planning process, utilizing your deferred compensation plan can be very, very beneficial from a taxation standpoint and helping the owner extract some assets out of the business onto their personal balance sheet, which is really a big key here. Yeah, oftentimes owners have 80 to 90% of their wealth tied up in the business because what they've done over time is just continue to invest and grow, continue to invest and grow. And I don't blame them, because the fastest way to grow wealth is investing in your company. There's no doubt about that. But then you come to this point where you now need to extract some of that wealth out of the business and then put it on your personal balance sheet so then you can live the life that you've been wanting to live. And so the earlier we can talk benefits with a client and talk about things like their 401k plan.
Well, that question just got posed. I think it's great. The specific question is, how can a 401k best be leveraged to allow employees to be the successors? Great question, because it is a topic we talk about a lot. So maybe while we're on this execution slide, talk a little bit about it or answer that question.
Yeah, you bet. I think 401k plans are oftentimes underutilized for this particular piece of the perpetuation process. A lot of times we add 401k plans just because we feel like we have to. We have to set up retirement plans for our people. But adding things like profit sharing to your 401k plan and being able to utilize that profit sharing so the business owners can get a larger share of pre-tax dollars going into their retirement plan will lower their income and help them now in the present from a taxation standpoint. Furthermore, in some situations, things like a cash balance plan can be added. Now, these things are all determined based on the age and the wages of the employees. So it's not a one size fits all, and don't want to run away from this and say, hey, I need to get a cash balance plan or whatnot. That's one tool that is available, but leveraging that 401k plan and utilizing the safe harbor feature and those types of things to be able to not discriminate, but meet all discriminating testing in an efficient way, but allow owners and key people to be targeted to put more away in profit sharing, and in some instances, a cash balance plan can really save you a ton in taxes in the present day and also make a more tax efficient exit later on. Now, you need to have a solid 5 to 10 year runway to execute something like that. I want to be very clear about that. And once you've committed to it, you're committed to it. And so getting into those details, that would be something for another time. But yes, those are items that I would be looking at adding. And I always look to add when we're dealing with business owners.
Well, and I know we're going to move on to the wealth gap analysis, which is one of my favorite things to talk about here. But why that's such a good question, and thanks for submitting it, is because that was probably one of the things for me as an owner of a business that I just didn't have insight into. I thought of the 401k as a benefit we provide our employees, which it's great in that regard, but I didn't realize how strong of a tool it can be. So great question.
Yeah,
Glad that was asked.
If it's possible to execute it there. If it's not, because you can't get by some of the discrimination testing and frankly, like understanding your people from a census standpoint and like what affects, the hiring process, it will also help you kind of get an understanding of what type of people or what type of demographic we should be like looking for in the future. If you want to stay out of that, things like non-qualified deferred comp then starts to play a role.
Totally.
And that can be solved in multiple different ways.
I love it. Lots of tools, lots of strategies.
Lots of tools, lots of strategies. Just to not walk away from these, but of course you have, step up in cost basis. And this is basically waiting for, the owner, quite frankly, to pass and to receive that step up in cost basis. Depending on, the situation within the ownership, it very much could be the viable way to pass it efficiently. We have, direct to giving. Direct to giving, though, is going to be very, very tied to if the business owner's done a good job of extracting assets out of the business and placed on their personal balance sheet in an efficient manner. a lot of my owners that are a little bit younger, their intent is to do everything they can to extract, be tax efficient, putting more money onto their personal balance sheet. So then they have more options to, frankly, do direct giving to those key people, or at least a portion maybe of direct giving. It actually benefits the owner a great deal for lowering some of their estate taxation in the long run. Family limited partnership is a very advanced type of estate planning technique, and good attorneys can kind of help us with that area to be able to kind of commingle and pool all the assets together and then turn on the different streams to the right people at the right times.
I love it. Well, so one of the things I mentioned earlier, and I teased a little bit talking through the wealth gap, this is something we talk a lot about. Did I skip it? Oh, no, I guess maybe I'm skipping ahead, aren't I?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not. It's first
No,
one. There we
you're
go.
good.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I talked earlier about, there's so much pressure from private equity, outside, third party interests and sales. And then you look at trying to transition it internally, and there's so much pressure. Let's, talk about managing our wealth and the wealth gap conversation. I think it's so important for people to understand.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties into what I was just talking about a little bit ago about, are we able to efficiently put money in our individual IRAs, our Roth accounts, our HSAs, all the different types of accounts that are available to us, and then maximizing those, getting those compounding in such a way that we're less dependent upon a big dollar value for the sale of the business. But the thing is we don't communicate very well in our business relationships, right? And one of the cardinal sins is we don't really want to talk about our finances. Right. We don't want to talk about religion. We don't want to talk about politics, and we don't really want to talk about our finances in the least depth. Right. And so a third party doing a wealth gap analysis on all the key players to understand, hey, how dependent upon the sale of this business and at what number do they need to get out of it are they? And what can be done over the next 5-10 years to develop a plan that is the most tax efficient to put them in the best position to win. And so the asset management piece of that is absolutely critical, and working with the estate planning attorney. So as an example, we've done this with multiple businesses. We may have like a business where you have the majority owners make up, say, 80% of it. And then we have a few minority owners in there. But, maybe they have 7 years till the goal, right? This value gap analysis will take those two business owners through a process of understanding, hey, what do we currently have? What buckets of money are currently in play? Are they being maximized? Are we putting the money in the right buckets at the right time? And what is that number to get us there where you can feel comfortable at selling at, say, whatever the business should sell at, right? And is the value of the business currently there, right? Or do we have a gap in that as well? Then also taking that one step further, those people that are identified as currently minority shareholders that we anticipate will become the primary shareholders in the future, taking them through that same process to understand how much they need. And then we can understand and identify what different tools and techniques can be used to help that person buy out the owners, depending on how dependent they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough conversation,
It is.
right? You said it earlier, for people to have, but it's so important to go through and make sure that, like it says here, you're ready to sell, right? Because it's a big part of achieving success post-sale. And when we have multiple people in the business that are in different positions in this conversation, we just have to be comfortable getting that conversation to the forefront and solving for it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And the third party piece of it is, I think, very critical to have that person there that's going to keep the confidentiality of the key people in play, right? Not revealing too much, but just getting a good understanding of what the needs are for each one of those people and devising a strategy for each one of them to be able to buy the owners out.
Well, and you just look at this slide, you can see if there's multiple people involved, the answer to that question is going to be different for everybody.
Exactly right.
And so we just
very rare that everybody is all on the same page when it comes to the investment and like their wealth and like kind of where that wealth is laid out, right? Everybody's going to be very different as to how they've approached that.
And the business,
we have good savers and we got good spenders out there, and it's hard to tell, like, the guy next to you, if that's, which one he is.
100%.
Unless you do the deep dive on it.
So yeah, maybe dive into the three legs of the stool, I suppose.
Yeah, so three legs of the stool, I talk about this quite a bit, is as a business owner, we basically, if we want to have a nice, steady stool to sit on, we need to have our financials in order, not only on the business side of it, but also on the personal side of it. And it's something that we should be able to, put our finger on very easily. We should be able to come up with that information very quickly. And so if we have any one of these legs of the stool that's, maybe a little deficient, it becomes wobbly and it becomes very difficult for us to have that stability. And so you have an intertwinement between all these things, right? And so we want to have a good, clear distinction as to where the weak points are. And so, that's kind of the whole idea behind the stool. And so, three things that we like to talk about with managing wealth, asset management, that's the clear and like the present day asset management. The estate planning is the forward looking and just really trying to understand, what should we be trying to shelter? What accounts, what is the business, are we at a place that we need to be drawing up some of the more sophisticated estate planning techniques? And then on the taxes side of it, taxes and inflation are going to dictate a lot of this in terms of what types of products, what types of accounts, and what types of investment are utilized to get the person in the best position possible.
I think that's the piece of this that was it's been eye-opening to me as I've seen what we've done for our current clients. I've seen what we did internally is just with the right amount of time, again, going to keep hitting that, the amount of strategic tax decisions we can make that have such a massive impact are crazy.
Well, that's a huge point because a lot of times people are just managing their taxes from a year to year standpoint. Yeah. They're just doing, what can I do this year to help myself out for taxes going into the next year, and not looking at the lifetime tax savings, which we definitely have to have kind of that forward looking mentality. Because otherwise, a lot of things like, the sophisticated 401k construction, non-qualified deferred, all these different types of things that we can put in place, if we don't have a good vision as to what the outcome is going to be, it becomes difficult for somebody to, bite the bullet and maybe spread those taxes out a little bit, right? And understanding there's different seasons in our life where tax tools can be utilized, right? Whether it's converting of Roths, taking some of that pre-tax dollars, because right now most business owners are in their highest tax bracket, so they're trying to do everything they can to get a little bit of doggone tax relief. So they're putting most of their stuff into pre-tax parts of whether that's profit sharing, the 401k, cash balance, any of those types of things to kind of reduce that load. But then there's an unraveling process that should occur sometime, right? And so the different types of Roth conversions can be utilized at that point. There's just a variety of things from the long, the lifetime of a person's taxation that needs to be taken in consideration. We shouldn't just be looking year to year.
Absolutely. Love it.
So a few of those tax saving strategies, obviously if a person is charitably inclined in this environment, there is a lot of different ways that we can pull on levers there to bunch contributions, to utilize things like donor advised funds, foundations. I'll get into those in a couple of minutes, but we have market strategies that are available to us as well. We have estate transfer strategies. These are all different tools that can be utilized. When we talk charitable strategies, a donor advised fund is fairly new to a lot of people. There's plenty of firms out there that will allow you to have an account where you can take, let's say you typically, from a charitable giving standpoint, you give away $25,000 a year typically, right? It may behoove you in a high income year to go ahead and bunch maybe 3 years of those and do 75,000 or 100,000. And take those funds and go ahead and maybe move those over into a donor advised fund. You're then able to go ahead and take that whole 100,000 and go ahead and utilize that as a deduction to offset some of that income and that. So very helpful. If you happen to have low cost basis stocks or investments, moving them into that donor advised fund is actually the premier way to go about it, because then you dodge having to pay capital gains on those investments. You don't lose those investments. They simply move into an account that will continue to grow for you. And then in the future, you do all of your gifting out of that, as opposed to doing the gifting out of your current cash flow. and your savings and all that good stuff, your current investments.
Well,
That account never goes away. It's one that has a beneficiary arrangement where it can be used as a legacy for children and things like that down the road, and they can continue your legacy of giving.
yeah, and well, and what I love about just charitable strategies is I think most business owners, I assume everybody listening to this, we build businesses in communities to support these communities. And to be able to have these strategies be on the back end of that, where we can take, the successful exit of our business and give back is so cool to me. So I know there's a handful listed here, and I know we're trying to navigate through time crunch here a little bit maybe, but I hope people think through just charitable strategies, and we really think about how we implement those. I know as business owners, that's really at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish.
It is. And I think a lot of times we're just not as efficient. We get hit up for all sorts of different things, right? And then we end up just paying it out of our, current cash and our stash, and that maybe from the business, get a little bit of a deduction. But if we can be mindful of that and kind of looking forward, things like donor advised funds, gift to family, making sure that we're, understanding like what our limitations are. Currently, you can give $19,000 every year. And if you happen to be filing jointly, you can double that, doing $38,000 to go towards the different family members that we want to give gifts to. Charitable remainder trust is a little bit more on the advanced side of things, but if a person has needs from an income standpoint, the charitable remainder trust can be very beneficial. And then what's left over will go to those charities. And then, of course, a family foundation can be on those really large scale family wealth that can make sense.
Very cool. I love it. Market strategies.
Yeah, market strategies. There's a lot in this that I feel that is underutilized a lot of times by a lot of the investment professionals out there and individuals. Is that, when bad times come and markets do go down, 80% of the time markets do go up, 20% of the time they go down. Those are opportunities. And loss harvesting is one of the tax strategies that I believe is really underutilized in taxable accounts. And so there are a lot of variety of ways to go about that. Utilizing ETFs can be very beneficial. ETFs, just in general, they're baskets of stocks or bonds or what have you that are put together for diversification purposes. But there is a strategy that can be utilized there. Let's say, we buy into the S&P 500 and we decide Vanguard is the fund we're going to use, and the market's dropped 25%, 30%. Well, we can go ahead and sell that Vanguard ETF and turn around and buy maybe the iShares version of it. They hold the same doggone stocks and same investments, but we've been able to grab that loss and put it to the side. This is very helpful because those losses can be used to offset the gains. And eventually we are going to have a large capital gain when we sell the business. And so if we can stack losses over time and continue to keep track of those losses, we can use those losses to offset those gains. So the entry point there, I would say, is ETFs and individual stocks. But then the next generation up would be the direct indexing strategies that are available. These used to not be available to everybody. We just didn't have the technology to support it. But direct index strategies would allow you, instead of buying an ETF, to actually buy the stocks that make up, say, the S&P 500. And when those stocks happen to have difficult periods, they go ahead and sell that, harvest those losses, put those to the side for us. That's one great way to get losses harvested. It's kind of the next step, next level above an ETF loss strategy. One level above that would be AQR strategies, which allows us to go ahead, as you can see, kind of the far left, we have the traditional direct indexing, and then using those assets and actually adding extension. So leveraging the investments to add, say, 15, 20% to the long strategy, and then maybe 15, 20% to the short strategy. So when you short a stock, obviously, if that stock was to go down or go up, we're playing the other side of the coin there. So if we had a stock go up, on the regular side, most of us understand that, but like shorting a stock allows us, if we identify companies that quite frankly think are crummy companies, if they go down, that's good for us, right? So utilizing that allows us, no matter what the market is doing, we are harvesting losses along the way.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think for me, seeing how we've implemented these strategies is there's so much opportunity there because the market's doing wild things, right? And let's take advantage of both
the ebbs and flows.
Both of the ebbs and flows, but utilize it to ultimately create the best outcome for us, our team, and then again, be able to do things that business owners are inclined to do with those, with these strategies, which to me, that's what's so cool, is when we can help people see success. We know that success is getting right back into our communities and getting back into these families and these businesses. And that's so cool to see.
Yeah, and these loss strategies are very helpful no matter what, but they're very beneficial if we can start them 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ahead of time.
There's that runway again.
Right? There's that runway. We've utilized them, you know, post sale within that 1 year, but then we only have 1 year of runway to go ahead and try to harvest those losses. And so if we can adopt some loss harvesting strategies well in advance, we're going to put ourselves in a great position to have a, you know, walk away number that's much higher because the taxation wasn't so severe at the point of sale.
Got it.
There's obviously a lot of estate planning strategies that can be utilized. I'm not an estate planning attorney, but here's 3 that kind of do make some sense. A grantor or retained annuity type trust is when we see these grats are utilized oftentimes. Family limited partnerships. The skin or private annuity is another technique that I've seen utilized quite a bit. That just kind of transfers the ownership to a vehicle and allows an income stream to be provided. And then depending on which one of these is utilized, a lot of times the beneficiaries, depending on which one we're talking about, it will end at the time of death, right? Reducing the tax load in the end.
Yeah, and I think one thing for me that I've really learned throughout this, when you talk about estate strategies, and I know we talked about the team before, how important it is to have, you know, your attorney that is inclined to understand estate planning strategies, accounting teams that are inclined to understand it, because, you know, we all as business owners have relationships over time. And sometimes, you know, they're very good at a certain area, but this particular conversation falls outside of their expertise. And, or maybe it doesn't, but I think those are things we need to identify pretty early on, because there's really incredible strategies that exist specifically when it comes to these conversations.
Yeah, and they're always changing. And so it's like really important to be, you know, kind of tip of the spear as things change, being able to have a good team that is in place, that is sharing information from their perspective as to what is most beneficial for that owner and their ultimate outcomes and their goals, which are going to be unique to them.
Awesome. This is always the question, right? Like, what's it mean? What happens?
What are we doing this for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we working? Why are we building businesses?
Yeah.
Why are we growing? Right. So, you know, finding fulfillment after the exit, I think, is absolutely something we have to be thoughtful about.
Yeah.
You know, how you structure your time, how other people react to you. You know, you're no longer going to have like that necessarily that big title. You know, it's a little bit different post exiting that company. What would be your new role after the exit? We like to oftentimes lay out literally a calendar to an owner and say, listen, I want you to take some time and some thought and just fill this thing up for the next 30, 60 days as to what you're going to spend your time on. You know, a lot of us like to golf, but man, you can only golf so much, right, and that's only so many hours that you can do that. So where are you going to get that simulation, you know, from, you know, in your mind, and how are you going to be able to go ahead and continue to, you know, train and get better once you have left the business?
And that's so right. And I don't want to, I want to stay on this for a second, because I mentioned it earlier, emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And like so much of what I think creates the emotion through these transitions is not having answers to these questions as the exiting owner. Because you think about it. Think about all of you entrepreneurs listening to this. Think about you builders, you know, that have built a business, and like all that went into it. And all of a sudden that's starting to come to a finality. And even if you're perpetuating it internally or within the family, and there's a bit like it's not done, but there's still that end that exists. And if you don't know what's on the other end of the horizon, it can just create a lot of stress, strain, emotion unnecessarily. And then that starts to impact everybody else in the organization that's trying to come along. And so that's the piece that I think I would stress so much. If you're the person exiting, you know, this might not be of a concern to you. You might be like, well, I'll deal with the emotion, but then it's going to impact the
people around you.
Yeah. And then if you're the one acquiring, I would highly recommend you make sure those exiting have thought through this so that you can help them navigate it, help them get comfortable, and just try to. Emotion's never going to go away. That's what's cool about this. That's what's fun about business. That's why we've built businesses. We're for all those reasons. But I think thinking through this, having these answers, having a very thought out process to solve for this, I cannot stress how important it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't either. I mean, as a business owner, what made you good, made you successful is being driven and having, being able to have that control and be able to, push the business forward. And sometimes like relinquishing that control is very, very difficult, but it is necessary in a successful transition, no doubt about it. And having a clear plan is what we need.
Yep. And I also realize, and like we said earlier, these conversations aren't easy.
No,
Totally understand.
there needs to be multiple conversations.
Yep. It's hard for business owners to answer these questions and actually think about them. But yeah, I mean, I think are we at was this the last slide maybe? Yep. Looks like it might've been. So yeah, I mean, we've got about 5 minutes left for questions. I don't know that any others came in. There might be one coming in right now. Yeah, anything. Yeah, good question. So the question, how does it change if we want to become an employee-owned company?
Yeah, I would say an employee-owned company, nothing changes in terms of the way we've laid things out, right? I would want to make sure that we understand what becoming, maybe engaging in an ESOP would look like, right? And that's not the only mechanism that we can, keep the company as employee owned, but an ESOP is one that gets thrown around a lot. There is a lot of complexities there. We want to make sure that we have a true understanding of what that means. Obviously, it's not an easy process to set up an ESOP. It can be very fruitful. When we talk about employee owned, there's a lot of other ways to incentivize our employees to feel like it is an employee owned company. We have things like phantom stock that we can utilize. We have all sorts of different types of bonus mechanisms that we can utilize to create that same type of feel that, if our KPIs are aligned correctly to the revenue of whatever area, we are in that particular company, then we do feel like we have skin in the game, and we do feel like we have, shared ownership. A lot of people, the first thing that they will point out is an ESOP. I want to have an ESOP. Well, we have to go into that with understanding what all that means. And we don't have enough time on this call to do that. For sure. But I would say that if it's something that your heart is pulling you to do, let's start the conversation, no doubt.
And speaking of time, I'm not entirely sure we have enough time to answer the next question, but the question is, do you have any examples of recent successful business exits? And the reason we probably don't have time is because there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of great business exits.
And we've kind of seen it all. I know you have. I don't know if there's one like high level we want to try to highlight quickly, but I mean,
well, it depends on what you define as success. Yeah. What is success? Is it a number? Is it like, what was the biggest exit that we had to a third party? Or was it that we maintained a family business that's been around for, 50, 60, 100 years, right? And, were we able to help them exit that business? And everybody still likes to talk to each other at Thanksgiving, and they like to spend time with each other, because that at the end of the day, for a lot of business owners, is what we're striving for, especially the family businesses.
Well, and maybe I'll answer that business. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do at Ellerbrock-Norris. And so to me, that obviously it's personal and all the things, but that has been very successful. And so not only have we seen success in advising our clients, but being able to navigate through it ourselves, that's been an incredibly successful journey. And what I love to share, and as we kind of wrap up with the group, is that is one of the unique things that at Ellerbrock-Norris, we have that lens to look through when we're giving advice. I mean, we've got our team, Ben, everybody that can give incredible advice. We've seen it all. But then to be able to have that other view, which is we've been there. We've done that. Like, you peel back the roof of so many businesses, and the things we're navigating are so similar across the board. And so I'm proud to say we've been able to successfully do it. I'm happy to, say we're also able to provide that vantage point and viewpoint for our clients. And so I don't know, but this has been fun, man.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
I think as we wrap it up, appreciate everybody joining. I know we'll send a recording out, I think, to those, but I don't know that we can stress enough again on how important this conversation is, because at the end of the day, we're all going to exit our businesses one way or another. And I hope for all of you, you're able to spend the time to figure out how to do it as successful as possible, whatever that means to you. To your point earlier, we all define success differently. And so I think you need to understand that, understand your purpose, and how do we protect it, and how do we figure out how to get through this as best we can.
Yeah.
Anything you'd add at the end here?
Yeah, I mean, finding your purpose and protecting that purpose is what it's all about. I mean, I believe deeply that to kind of like guide the organization is we have to understand what the purpose is that defines the vision that we have.
100%.
And once we have that set up, then we have a better understanding of what success truly is when we do exit.
I love it. Well, thank you all for hanging with us this whole time. There'll be contact information. You probably already have it, but feel free to reach out. We're happy to help navigate through these conversations for you.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, man. That was fun.